temperatures here, they say it's bright, but hidden deep, it's not so light. They say it's bright. They say it's bright. Say it's bright. Pink hydrogen wrapped up need. Nuclear tricks, disguised as clean.
Hello everybody, welcome back. You're doing well.
They sell us dreams, they paint it bold, but what's hidden there is cold. A polished face, a crafted guise, pink hydrogen.
Pink Hydrogen. It's a song by filmmaker and musician James Lucid on YouTube. You'll find links below the description. Also, hope you're having a great day. Always takes me a minute. My apologies. It is a lot of work to do a live show. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with it, but the whole process is... You're not allowed to make mistakes. You can call into these live shows. All lines are currently open. It's 709 in Canada, 589-4406. You can call United States, New Mexico. You can text. Don't be shy. I can assure you I'm not. A little bit sometimes, maybe. So this is Fukushima's 14th anniversary week, and today's the 12th. On the 12th was Reactor 1 blew up, and over the next couple of days, 3 days, Reactor 3 and 4 blew up, and Reactor 2. At the top of each of the buildings was approximately 9 reactor cores, including the reactor core. And then the fuel pools had around 8 reactor cores, or maybe more. We don't know for sure. But that's where they kept the 4 decades of reactor cores. And so I want to talk about the health effects. Now, the official story is there was no health effects. Nothing happened. Not a single person got a single hair on anybody's head was hurt by radiation. Not one. That's the official story. Not a single injury has been documented. But that's simply not true. And there was a lot of dissenting voices in the first couple of years. And we're slowly going to try to walk our way through some of that. Last night was a pretty taxing show. It was a 3-hour show. And I'm just starting to get back to myself. I clearly got a ways to go, though. Which is quite disappointing for me. It's not that disappointing as long as I get better, right? Oh, so let's keep after it here now, because I'm probably going to last an hour, but we're shooting for 2, like normal. I'm going to start using this format, and I can zoom in too, right? Which comes in handy sometimes. So the water cannons couldn't spray the reactors. And they were on the seaside, down by the ocean. And so there's a big turbine buildings, very long in front of the reactors. And this is where the military was hid away down there trying to spray water over. Now normally each reactor needs 4,500 tons of water a minute. Think about 4,500 one-ton pickup trucks driving past your front door every minute, and you can appreciate how much we're actually talking about. They were turned away because the radiation levels were too high. So there was no way to reconnect power months later because there was nothing left anyway. But once you have these high numbers, those numbers don't magically disappear. And we have no way approaching it, so they never disappear. Just keep that in mind as we roll through a lot of this stuff tonight. I highly recommend avoiding anything from Asia, any food from Asia. It's going to be hard to avoid it because the whole planet was contaminated with it, but they never stopped growing food in the nuclear wasteland, and so that's pretty disappointing. High radiation levels around the plant prevents helicopters from dumping water on the spent fuel rods. So not only could the pump trucks not go near it, the water cannons on top of that, but helicopters couldn't go near it. And all 600 helicopter pilots at Chernobyl died in the first couple of weeks. Every one of them. Some of them just fell out of the sky because the doses were so high. You won't find that on Wikipedia. You'll find it at Harvard University, though, where I got it to, and I can show it to you if you like. Just text me or call me. So they're still growing. They never stopped growing food in the nuclear wasteland. Each prefecture is around 1 million pounds of rice a year. I'm sorry, 1 billion pounds of rice a year. Do you have a street in your community where 7 people dropped dead on a shopping street? And so when you had 36 reactor cores melt down, 32 in 4 fuel pools and 4 in the reactors, then is it safe to assume that this probably had something to do with it? Have you ever heard tell of a street where 7 people dropped dead, a shopping street, where 7 people just going around shopping and then dropped dead? That happens to be in a nuclear wasteland. So they picked up 30 million 1-ton bags. These are only tiny bags because AI is really hard to get along with sometimes. But it gives you some more insight, because there's 150,000 sites where they stored 30 million 1-ton bags. So this is not one of them. Clearly, this is an AI picture. 150,000 sites. Now, we only got about 1,000 official pictures. I made 14,000 pictures to try to show you what was missing in the equation. Nearly 3,000 evacuees were rushed to hospitals by the ambulances from shelters in the nuclear wasteland, and the nuclear wasteland, the nuclear wasteland. And so the doses were so high because the buildings had such a big inventory. This was radiation poisoning, and they've been trying to blame it on stress. And we've seen millions, over 10 million people at a time post-Fukushima evacuate for supercell cyclones, supercell typhoons, supercell hurricanes. And we never seen this type of attribute at any of these events, right? So I think it's a safe bet to say that was 3,000 victims of the severe radiation poisoning, because they evacuated too late. And we can quantify all of our assertions because that's what we do here. And of course, Fukushima Prefecture is just one of the 14 prefectures where the food was banned by 55 countries for a decade. And this prefecture should never, ever, under any circumstances, be open or be producing food ever again. This clearly was a catastrophic event. And the 30 million 1-ton bags were just 3% of the land where they scraped up 2 centimeters of topsoil, which is 3/4 of an inch. Try scraping up 3/4 of an inch of topsoil and you find it's impossible. German TV interview on Fukushima. More and more people living in highly contaminated places are dying of heart disease because of cesium. Of course, there's 1,000 other fission products you got to worry about just besides cesium. Cesium certainly a concern. And the people that are profiting off your destruction, that's probably a very accurate depiction of them. Before Fukushima, 100 atoms a kilogram of cesium, for instance, is nuclear waste. But if you got 100 atoms of cesium, you've got 1,000 atoms of strontium-90. You get 100 million atoms of iodine-129. Who knows? Like there's 1,000 isotopes are going to be in that same sample. After its safety, so they got everybody fixated on cesium, as if that was the holy grail. But the reactors actually run on plutonium, uranium, and their biggest byproduct is going to be curium isotopes. And curium isotopes need lead shielding 20 times thicker than plutonium isotopes do. Medical journal article, 14,000 United States deaths after Fukushima. So that was upgraded to 20,000 about 3 weeks later. And this study came out shortly after. And we had just bear with me here, we had a poll, I never got to, my apologies. Is Fukushima unprecedented nuclear event, radioactive fallout from that nuclear event, which is the worst we've ever heard tell of in human history, beyond a worldwide extinction level event? There is a extinction event playing out in all oceans and all forests and all meadows, all communities. It's very subtle if you don't understand, if you're not paying attention to statistics and something. But the minute you do, you start saying, holy smokerooey. Oh yeah, I know what I wanted to do. Let me get after that again. And the idea is, if we start thinking about, I should set the timing for a bit longer for stuff like that. Just hang with me. That was the wrong one, I guess. There we go. That's a bit better speed. And then I got to boot it all the way out in order so you can read the next headline. But I'll slowly refine this technique, and it'll fill in some gaps for you. Expert 50 atoms a kilogram. You can put 200 million atoms on the head of a needle, you can't see it. So as a parent, as a guardian, as a consumer, as a human, how are you going to protect yourself from such a fractional amount, right? You can't smell it. You can't pick it up and smell it, for instance, or you can't physically see it, and you can't hear it or taste it, or it's not tangible. You can't perceive it. And the Geiger counter, which is a really nice Geiger counter, my Inspector Geiger counter up there, that's only going to detect gamma, and it's not going to do a very good job at that. And so when you see a big number like 255, that's a big number, you probably want to multiply by 600 because it doesn't pick up all the other isotopes. And you know they can, if you got one, then the rest of them also has to be there. And currently we're expecting a heavy radiation plume from Japan to cover northern hemisphere, sustained for a while, for at least a month, because of a big forest fire they have in the nuclear wasteland. 50 atoms a kilogram in humans, in adults, not just children, but adults, and so horses, bears, everybody, every other species too, lead to irreversible lesions in the vital organs. Or irreversible lesions. Doesn't that sound like a yummy, irreversible lesions? Big changes in the number of child deaths in Fukushima due to illnesses after July. And death from cardiovascular disease doubled, cancer and leukemia also increased. And so as you slowly start to build this picture, this so-called consensus, you start to realize there's something missing right from the narratives you're hearing today. And if you can handle this stuff and sit around and watch this whole program, and the last 3 programs, this one included, then you're very informed. You're very articulated on the subject. And not many people is going to beat you in a factual conversation. If you've been around for a few weeks or a month, you're probably the smartest people out there on this particular subject. If you've been around for years, there's no one going to beat you on this subject. No academic, no journalists, no scientists, no nuclear experts are going to be able to legitimately beat you in a conversation or even come close to it. That's something to be proud of. And you'll be able to protect yourself in many ways most people have no hope of understanding. Japanese author, extreme increase of mortality by cardiac disease. This is obviously from the radiation fallout they're talking about. The death rates might give the creeps to some people. 12,700 extra people died in a single month compared to the same month of the year before. So this was an abnormality. Now, this is by no means all that was going on, as you'll start to gather up as we go through this stuff. So growing food and catching food in a nuclear wasteland, selling it in a nuclear wasteland, and pretending it's not a nuclear wasteland is the definition of denial. The situation in Fukushima is beyond imagination. Many young and old people dying from heart attacks. Young women dying of leukemia. That's 2013. This thing just keeps going and going on its own, doesn't it? Let me see if I can let me set up a medium here. See right there. I'll get there. Experts are already hearing reports of kids suffering heart attacks. So kids are not supposed to have heart attacks. This is common now. It's post-Fukushima, right? So my last video was really good, but the video before that was where I go through all the buildings and everything one by one and through a lot of other important stuff to build that picture. And then my last video is meant to take you back to the original headlines, which is last night's video. And then this night is to give you a little peek at different health consequences from a nuclear accident. And as you start, you have to watch the whole video to be able to really appreciate how this has entrenched itself in every facet of your lives. How radiation does that. I'm already hearing reports of kids suffering heart attacks. It's just absurd. It's such a terrible industry. It should never existed. And we can blame everybody we want to, but we should blame ourselves because now we know better. And we need to do something. And the only way to do something is, like everything else, you just got to get busy and slowly start picking up the information and start finding a way to share it. And you'll find out that's how the world changes for the better. High school teacher and a 16-year-old student dies in their sleep on the same night. That's quite the theme, though. We've seen a lot of these headlines. 2 high school students in the same school died at once. Fukushima worker had a heart attack while working on number 1 reactor. Was only 31 years old. So the word heart attack certainly comes up a lot, doesn't it? And those numbers should make you quite worried. Melted fuel from Fukushima Reactor 3 is the highly lethal mixed oxide uranium plutonium. So this is Reactor 3 was reclaimed uranium, reclaimed plutonium. It should never. It's a concoction that should never exist. I have to bring in some pictures of the reactors. That's Reactor 3 up there in case you're not familiar with it, or just to reinforce it. June 30th meeting revealed depleted uranium storage facility had burned after the quake. So this is 1,800 pounds. In some estimates, that's more than Chernobyl. 1,800 pounds, by the way. This was at a oil refinery site. So if you look at pictures of Fukushima, some of the pictures will have oil refineries with a big blaze, like a very intense, very bright, a lot of tugboats out on the ocean side spraying water on it. That was this facility. And that on its own is a catastrophic event. See? Radiation around Fukushima nearing levels where humans... Fukushima, by the way, had around 20 to 24 million pounds. And 36 reactors that disappeared. And they didn't disappear. They released their inventories into the environment through a number of different ways. All of them through explosions, for starters. Radiation around Fukushima nearing levels where humans vomit uncontrollably. Remember that story about 3,000 evacuees were rushed to the emergency units? Think about this story. Radiation around Fukushima nearing levels where humans vomit uncontrollably and the hair can be stripped from the body. And so Harvard University, one of their nuclear experts they done a presentation after Fukushima, had acknowledged that there was radioactive plumes going through the local communities at around 10 sieverts. And so if you're in that plume, that's a lethal dose. Right away, too. And certainly within the next week, you'll die from it at latest. Tokyo nuke cloud crisis. Tokyo. So Tokyo had a nuclear clouds, many clouds go through it. But the first one that went through it was a catastrophic because the original detonations, explosions, whatever you want to call them, criticalities, excursions, whatever, the original / explosions for the average person were 36 reactor cores. So after the 5 days, 6 day, then what was going on was chain reactions, and that was consuming steel and rebar and cement and rocks and gravel and water, and it atomized and aerosoled it. They literally turned it into fine particles, but those particles were ionized and radiated. And so you're creating more than existed through that process, right? Each day you're creating the equivalent of multiple nuclear weapons going off in radioactive fallout because of that particular attribute that it has, where it burns at 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. It can consume everything around it, atomize and aerosol it instantly, but also ionize and radiate it. And those particles can harm anything with replicating cells. A reporter says you hear an ambulance coming to Fukushima plant at least 10 times a day. The third Fukushima nuclear worker is dead. Of course, the official story is none of this happened. It didn't melt down. There was no releases. Nobody ever got injured. And just because that's the official story, that doesn't mean that's the real story. What you're learning tonight is incontestable. It's unassailable documentation. Another Fukushima cleanup worker dies, found collapsed after removing radioactive soil. So this is the homeless, the one, anybody working at the site or picking up 1-ton bags of radioactive fallout are the homeless, the destitute, the victims of society, the immigrants who don't speak the language. They're not employees for nuclear plants or university nuclear students or alumni or academics or nuclear corporations. These are victims of society. Cesium, by the way, immediately damages the heart muscle, and it's not just going to be cesium, right? There's a horrific elixir of isotopes. Birds that are unable to fly allows humans to approach them. Top Tokyo doctors dealing with nuclear workers and demand the government step in as the Fukushima plant for safety reasons. The workers can't even read. And we have a whole folder on the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society and the immigrants who don't speak the language, you know, the workers, the employees. And that's why I describe it that way, because that's who they are. And then if you go to Japan and you eat in the restaurants or the 7-Elevens, you're going to get poisoned for sure. That's their way of getting rid of a lot of the radioactive foods. So whenever you see these black plastic bags, it's meant to represent 1-ton black bags out of the 30 million 1-ton black bags that they picked up. And we've seen supermarkets at 40,000 microsieverts in Tokyo, 270 kilometers away. A Fukushima worker filmed at the plant. I was asked to fake documents. Underage people are employed. And the interesting thing about the nuclear industry, it's a very coward industry. There's nobody there is going to, like, you know, one of the only detractors out there are the cowards. They typically hide away. The only one that doesn't really hide away was Stinkfoot. And he was employed, / Thunderfoot. He was employed by TEPCO. And Calm Down Charlie, Yoshida Mashada, which is one of the reasons I'm now committed to this for the rest of my life, and that's why we do these particular shows this way. Because I can't do anything else. They have smeared me so much in my country and in my communities, in my surrounding communities, in my province, that I can't go do anything without propaganda coming after me. And so they left me no options but to do this. I don't have no other choice. This is all I can really do, which is fine with me. Not that I give a shit what anybody says about me. But it was called Operation Long Jump. And they called into the show and bragged about it, how they were going to destroy me everywhere. And this is not just in my country, Canada. This is worldwide. They succeeded 100%. They've been doing it, stalking me for over 10 years. The same people on top of that for over 10 years, and used to call in every show multiple times. All of my detractors, there was quite a few detractors. Only one was public, and that was a weasel. Stingfoot, right? Fireman dies after working in Fukushima after the quake, vomited blood frequently, and finally died of renal failure. There's a lot of firemen died. There's over 300 police officers died that were assigned to keep people out of the radioactive nuclear wasteland. They would stand up at the gates they put up to keep people out of the community. Over 300 of those police officers have died. Hospital, 40% of the Fukushima visitors showed internal exposures to radiation. Well, how could you not? Like, the numbers are just absurd, by the way. You can't drink water, you can't eat food. Over 1,000 nuclear workers have internal radiation of 10,000 counts per minute. I know what you're going to say, but Dana, they had paper suits on. I know, right? Problem is, paper suits can't protect you from paint, let alone radiation. There is nothing can protect you from radiation. Like a 6-foot thick lead suit might protect you, but depending on where you to, of course. But cesium-137, just typical radioactive fallout, pulses energy 600 feet. And so would you rather have on overalls, which are 10 times, 20 times thicker than a paper suit, or a paper suit? And the problem was, whatever you wear, you have to get rid of it, throw it away at the end of the day. You can't use it another time. And so TEPCO even come out and acknowledged he burned 7,000 paper suits every single day. The only problem is there's not 7,000 people at that time on this site. That was a made-up fictional number. It's a nuclear meltdown. 7,000. You can have 100,000 people. There's not much you can do, is it? It's a nuclear meltdown. You can't. Over 1,000 nuclear workers have internal radiation at 10,000 counts per minute after visiting the nuclear wasteland. After working in affected areas, 4 workers have died. The official story is nobody's ever died. Nobody's ever been hurt. Remember that as you're reading through all of this. Victims of leukemia or heart attacks. Report indicates 5 Fukushima workers have most likely received fatal radiation doses. Nuclear regulatory transmissions, right? But I'd be afraid to go to the supermarkets anywhere on the planet now, unfortunately. Particularly if you're in North America, but horrifically if you're in Japan. Bless your heart. I feel so much pain for you. And we fight so that the world can have a conversation. Workers died while decontaminating in Fukushima. So they're talking about picking up 1-ton bags. Because these were fuel particles. The minimum number, by the way, was 100,000 atoms of cesium-137. They refuse, even today, to acknowledge the other isotopes. They barely will acknowledge that. Japanese government is looking for kamikaze decontamination workers for the Fukushima prefecture, the entire prefecture. Fukushima Daiichi worker dies, have been preparing to cover for Medusa 2013. Well, there was no cover put on that until 2019 or something. It was just they got a homeless person to walk with, and when you hear worker, it's a homeless person or an immigrant who don't speak the language or an economically depressed person, or it's not an employee. It's not somebody who's articulated. It's not somebody that has an education or anything like that, let alone on this topic. It's a nutty industry. It attracts the craziest people conceivable. University of Pittsburgh radiation expert. And again, there was descending voices originally, right? And I'm showing you that tonight. But they disappeared. Child cancer's risk doubles if exposed to just a couple of X-rays worth of radiation. And with the radioactive fallout that covered Canada, United States, New Mexico, and everywhere else, in particular, and the rest of the planet, but it was 10 million times background level from a French government study of cesium-137, which each atom is pulsing pulsing 600 feet every second, almost at the speed of light. And so when you're getting hit, when you're in that kind of a plume sustain, everybody was getting multiple X-rays a day, so to speak. And there's another way to create it. X-rays. There's two different types of X-rays. Or you go to the hospital, you get an X-ray. You're familiar with that one, I'm sure. But there's another X-ray. It's caused by the four emitters: gammas, alphas, neutrons, and betas. And so you got four different atoms in your room floating around. And they pulse energy. Say cesium will pulse at 600 feet. So it can be outdoors, and you got three in your house. That'll come in and hit one of the other energies from a neutron or a beta or an alpha, because cesium's a gamma. And when they get in proximity to each other, almost at the speed of light, each of them coming in almost at the speed of light. Try wrapping your mind around that statement. And they don't mingle with each other. They reflect off each other. And that reflection is like a spark. It's called an X-ray. We describe it as an X-ray. Something to think about. Radiation health specialists: children with over 11 atoms a kilogram of cesium start to see heart problems. So the Kellogg's cereal that was coming out of Japan was at 20 atoms a kilogram of cesium-137, which is more than enough to destroy their health. And this study was based out of Chernobyl. Japanese medical experts are deeply concerned about children radiation exposure. 51% of the kids contaminated with cesium-137. Again, because that's what their Geiger counters can find, right? But again, you got to appreciate it can't just be gammas. It's got to be alphas and neutrons and betas, and there's got to be, because you got that concoction, then you're going to have X-rays. I forgot last night, but so don't forget again. James Lucid donated $350 earlier the week. Bless your heart, James. And that was greatly appreciated. Original mystery, black substance. So what they noticed about the radioactive fallout was that algae would bioaccumulate it. And the numbers we're talking about are just horrifying numbers, like 95,000 counts per minute. So if that's alongside of a bus shelter, for instance, within 100 feet of a bus shelter, then the kids or whoever is going to be in that bus shelter are getting brutal doses. If that's is on the sidewalk in front of your house, you're getting brutal doses in your house for the rest of your life. It's quite the phenomenon. What happens is the algae. Think of the algae like fungus or something like that. So this will actually sterilize the fungus. The fungus won't break down. It'll kill the fungus, but it won't allow the biota to break down the fungus like would typically happen, right? So say it was dry, it was sunny day and the fungus dried out. At nighttime, then the biota, the little creatures, would start to break it down. But the radiation will kill all those creatures forever. And it doesn't break down. But when the radiation is trickling along, once you touch that fungus, it aggregates in there. It's like a glue trap for insects or something, right? Think of it that way. So when they're talking about 60,000 counts per minute, it was in beta. The rest of it may be alphas, but you can't have just betas and alphas. You got to have neutrons and you got to have gamma. Just like if you're going to have these types of numbers, you have all 4 of the emitters, and that is a horrifying concoction to have in one place. German government study: children who live in their nuclear disease factories, nuclear power plants, have double leukemia rate, higher incidences of solid cancers. But it's not just going to be cancers. There's heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome, schizophrenia. And we've seen a huge amount of that. Oh, let me go back to that because I added that in there. Mysterious black substance had 1 million atoms a kilogram of cesium, seen all over Minimasoma. Like 1 million kilograms of cesium per kilogram atoms. When you see the BQ, that's like the Beck wall, and that's the pulse of energy each second. But what created that pulse of energy each second? That was the physical atom, right? So it's 1 million atoms per kilogram of just cesium. So it doesn't work that way. You're going to have at least 1 million gammas. If you got 1 million gammas, you got 1 million alphas, 1 million betas, 1 million neutrons too, right? Which are producing multiple millions X-rays every second. With the official story, none of this happened. And if I wasn't here, then officially none of this never did happen. We're the only educational program in human history, which is a terrifying thought. It's depressing, really, for me. Because the idea of an educational program, which you would create a lot of people that were articulated, right? And they would get out, and whenever the conversation come up, they would have the right replies. And I provide the documentation to make sure that they were comfortable. Police officers, over 300 police officers had died, and a lot of it was kidney failure and bone cancers, which is the leading tumors and cancers. Of course, it's not only going to be cancer that takes you out, right? There's just a incredible amount of illnesses and diseases and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries and illnesses. Fukushima medical care provider, hospital president says the people will be healthier after radiation exposures from triple meltdowns. It's actually 4 meltdowns and 32 reactor cores and 8 fuel pools melted down too. They were at the top of reactor 1, 2, 3, and 4. Each reactor had 2 fuel pools at the top of the buildings because you don't have a repository in Japan or anywhere else on the planet. And that's where they keep the reactor cores when they come out of the reactors. And they can't stay in the reactors very long, right? Because they break down, they become very fragile, and they start to bulge and lose their integrity. And if you let them go any longer, they'll cook off. And then everybody has to run away from the nuclear site. So they'll take them out after around 14 months, to at least 1/3 of them. Like the ones that are looking like they're going to be damaged, right? And they'll take them out. Hospital presence of people will be healthier. And so this is, what kind of hospital does stuff like that? It's a terrifying reality that you can't trust a hospital. That's a terrifying thing because the nuclear industry has screwed up everything on this planet. Right? If it wasn't for the nuclear industry, we have a wonderful planet. There'd be all kinds of species. It'd be an unbelievable amount of species if we didn't have nuclear on this planet. I don't know if you appreciate how this planet would look like if you didn't have nuclear power plants on your planet. Or nuclear testing or nuclear dumping. Well, just the nuclear industry. None of it can exist without nuclear power plants, right? All nuclear misery came from nuclear power plants. You can't have a nuclear weapon without nuclear power plants. You can't have nuclear waste without a nuclear power plant. Everything comes from a nuclear power plant. And all of them surrounded by farms as far as you can see. That should horrify That should just mortify everybody on this planet. Tokyo Hospital posts a sign at the entrance. We do not serve any tests for radiation exposure or treatment for irradiation in a nuclear wasteland of all places. Fukushima Mom, 5 hospitals refuse to provide medical care to the children. We can't be seen by a doctor. It's just not right. It will be confusing, the doctor said, if our results is different from Fukushima Medical University. And Fukushima Medical University was taken over by the International Atomic Energy Agency and the nuclear industry and then weaponized against everybody in Japan. They set the rules for healthcare and they set the standards for illnesses, and they covered up everything. And so the victims that came to that hospital and left, all of them should be suing those people for what they done to them. Irreversible heart damage for children with 50 atoms a kilogram of cesium-137. Irreversible heart damage for children. Like 50 atoms a kilogram, right now it's legal to ship food into your country because they only acknowledge cesium for starters, which is the most absurd statement imaginable. They ship that everywhere at 100 atoms a kilogram, but 50 atoms a kilogram is irreversible heart damage. At 11 atoms a kilogram, you start to see heart damage, permanent heart damage. At 50 atoms a kilogram for adults, you see permanent lesions to all your vital organs. Permanent lesions. So we might be able to get some medical help for it, but animals don't. And that's why they're almost disappeared now. Sources say there's 1,000 kinds of radioactive material released from the reactor, so why are we always talking about cesium-137? Why are they using that as a marker for anything when you got 1,000 different types of isotopes that have all of there's no man-made anthropogenic isotopes that any species, any humans, any of the 8 million species on this planet has an autoimmune trigger to defend against. Right? We can't defend ourselves against any man-made radiation. Our body attacks it for the rest of your life with white blood cells and builds a tumor around it eventually. That's your body's response, is to build a tumor around it. So when you're hearing of cancer spikes, think about that. 1 million atoms a kilogram of cesium at a school in Fukushima, and that was after being decontaminated. So a university research team collected lynching at the entrance of the gymnastic hall of a school that restarted after a decontamination operation. It was 1 million atoms a kilogram. That was after decontamination. But officially, none of this happened. I'm full of shit. No matter how much evidence I give you, it cracks me up sometimes, right? Big secret. Oh, that's big secret, Dana. I remember we had this one caller, Arsehole, I think his name was. No, that's his real name. I'm not kidding you. And he was talking to me saying nothing happened at reactor 4, so I brought up that picture as he was talking, and like a 15-second delay on your end, right? So by the time he sees the picture, so then I was like, okay, that's about 15 seconds. He says, what about the picture I got up there? Oh, that's secret damage. My apologies, I could have turned the audio down. I didn't. Very dried out, eh? My throat. I'm doing okay, though. We're getting through this. I was really debating, do I do a show tonight? Because this is a 3-hour show last night. Or is people going to watch the show last night if we do a show tonight? It's such an important show, right? And then all 3 shows, this show and my last show and the other show, 3 shows back, counting this one. You need to watch that show if you're not familiar with the subject. It's super important information in that one for you to get you up to scale. You appreciate all the buildings and everything else. And then the last night was showing you the headlines and other stuff. And this night is to show you there's health harms. To show you there's an overwhelming amount of health harm documented. Even though officially none of this happened. So officially that never happened over there. Officially it looks like what these crazies are telling you. Like, isn't it horrific that journalists can do that and there's no other journalists out there to call them out? They're pretending they're on top of a building that doesn't even exist, and there's no one out there to call them out. They're all doing the same thing. So why would you subscribe to TV? Why would you fund something like that, see? I have known cable in 30 years. Anyway, right? I grew up with no TV, no radios, right? So you're always reading. And I didn't read junk. I was very fortunate. I read some pretty interesting books, I must admit. Persons living 170 miles from Fukushima shows dangerous high radiation levels. I mean, at the age of 10, you wouldn't believe the stuff I was reading, like articulated stuff. At that age, right, you really get addicted to that kind of stuff. You don't understand it. And some of them books, I enjoyed it so much, like I read them 6 times, for instance. Just at the time, you didn't know, right? You didn't understand that wasn't normal. You thought you were normal because, I'm a normal person. I'm reading all this la-ti-da stuff, right? No fiction, no science fiction, no Western garbage. All just hardback. And hardback books back then were very coveted, right? Persons living 170 miles from Fukushima shows dangerously high radiation levels. Dangerously. March 25th, 2011. The date doesn't really matter too much. The story matters more. Because some of these stories didn't get told till years later, right? Airline makes emergency landing, but some of them did. Airline makes emergency landing in the Midwest. 4 passengers being held in sterile rooms because of radiation. And I meant to look up the pictures. I got the pictures of that stuff. Where their loved ones are outdoors, like with their hand on the glass. They're inside with their hand on the glass, and they're not allowed to go near each other because they had such high radiation levels. And recently, a couple of weeks ago, we covered, because I got links below my video to 4.3 million redacted emails. Those links are all to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's website from the Freedom of Information Act. And they were talking about, we had done a few shows in a row about it, where the airlines were doing communications with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, asking about what are they going to do with all these radioactive passengers that were coming out of Japan. Nuclear fallout will engulf Taiwan starting April 6th. Will engulf. So the entire island, it's a huge island, a lot of people out there, right? People should stay home or immediately take off their clothes and cleanse the nuclear contaminant. When you read the story, they throw away your clothing, throw away your boots. And by rights, like if you're ever in this environment, you need to shave your head and shave your eyebrows. And you need to shower 10 to 20 times. And then every towel and face cloth you use, you need to throw it away. Oh yeah, I do got this one. I do got some of the story there. From a distance of 2,500 kilometers, will push a cloud of strontium. Wow, something besides Cesium-137 for a change. That's pretty cool. And radioactive iodine. And after the first 1,000 days, strontium-90, for instance, is produced on a ratio of 100 to 1 of Cesium-137. Of course, Cesium-137 in Canada, United States, was at 1 million to 10 million times background level sustained. So it could be 30 million atoms per cubic meter of air of Cesium-137 alone. Taiwan will draw in the fallout, which will engulf the whole island for at least 2 days. So they're talking about a plume. They were only acknowledging the plumes. They were downplaying it by doing that. So they were claiming that a plume was going to come through for 2 days. But then the plume leaves a stupid amount of radiation behind, even if that was true, see? The plume covered the whole planet. And that's the problem, is it covers the whole planet. A continuous plume. Let me give you a little demonstration of that with Neptunium-239. So this model is based on 20 days. So is there that plume, say you're in the center of that plume, do you think you're going to be out of that plume in 2 days? Remember, it's just the first 20 days. See those few white spots there? They're gone after a few more days, right? And that's the Neptunium-239. Neptunium-239 is pretty deceptive because that's going to decay to plutonium-239 in 2.5 days. And that's not going to decay for at least 24,000 years. And plutonium is known to cause 3 different tumors. We're supposed to get a snowstorm kind of tomorrow. We got no snow, zilch snow out there right now. And I don't know if that'll be enough snow to take the skidoo out. I'm hoping it is, but I'm not going to go out and wreck the skidoo on rocks and everything. If there's not enough, right? It's just... See, ideally, you would get heavy snow, and then it would warm up a bit, and then that snow would freeze that night, right? And then when you get your next snow on top of it, now you got an actual foundation, right? So we're talking about, a fluffy snow. We might get 20 centimeters, say, of snow, and there's not going to be no foundation underneath it. And I got a pretty big skidoo. I just would love to get out there and do some research, but I can't. You can't destroy the equipment just for the sake of a couple of days, right? People should stay home while the nuclear fallout is here, in order to avoid. Now, mind you, if it's decent, I can go. I will go. Don't get me wrong. I'll be gone. The last trip out, the last snow anyway, was out 3-4 times in a row there, and never seen a single bird. And then the last day on the way back up the street here on the skidoo, because you can drive on the roads down here, right? You can take your quads down the road or your skidoos down the road. The cops are not going to chase you. Not even going to give you a hard time. Unless you don't get your helmet on or something, but it's highly unlikely even then they'll bother you. When I was coming back, there was somebody that put the garbage out, and they had a few bags of garbage, and that's where the birds were trying to get into the garbage. I've never seen that out in nature. People should stay home while the nuclear fallout is here, in order to avoid prolonged exposures. And those who must go out should immediately take off their clothes and cleanse the nuclear contaminants from their bodies as soon as they are back. People should wear long sleeve clothing and mask when they go out on a sunny day. And carry an umbrella if it rains. Now, Taiwan is brutally pro-nuclear. The Taiwan nuclear universities had their students for 2 years, and the nuclear universities staff and alumni, nuclear companies, nuclear power plant employees, there's around 2,200 of them, were spamming the internet for the first couple of years with propaganda about radiation fallout, saying it was like a banana and a potato chip and walking in the sunshine. And they were going out in all the conversations and then getting in there and putting in their propaganda. And if they ran in opposition, they would just tweet out to their private club there, and they would bring in 15 or 20 of their fellow students, pro-nuclear students, to spam the page until any dissenting voices were silent. They really are they really are just a curse on humanity. Which reminds me, just stay for 1 second there. I'll show you that carbon-free Hinkley Point. It's the biggest construction project in human history. Hinkley Point. That's carbon-free, apparently. It's enough cement to build a sidewalk to Rome and back, apparently. Where's that crazy student? Oh, there it is.
The normal level that already exists in the water we eat, sleep, drink, bathe in today.
So that's a university student pro-nuclear with propaganda. Like, what kind of industry where the student who's not even graduated has to go out and lie to the population? Name an industry. Play that one more time. It's only like 5 seconds, is it, or something? 6.
The normal level that already exists in the water we eat, sleep, drink, bathe in today.
Kayla Cunningham from MIT Cambridge, was it? Turned out a very likable lad, I can tell you that much. There we go. So when you ingest the radiation, inhale it or drink it or consume it, it increases the radiation exposure by a factor of 1 trillion. But a factor of 1 trillion. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Let me keep it rolling. And so the radiation, you inhale it or drink it or breathe it in or consume it. Now it sequesters in your muscles, your organs, and your bones. And it's pulsing energy almost at the speed of light every second. So that's going to, every second it's wrecking chromosomes and DNA and cells and organs and everything. So your body and bone marrow and stem cells, whatever, and radioactive hormones, you're producing radioactive hormones and radioactive stem cells. So this is producing all kinds of health issues with your body because your body doesn't recognize it. Right? It doesn't have a solution for it. So everything that's damaged, your body tries to repair it every second. And at the same time, and it does that with white blood cells, at the same time, it's attacking the source with a prolific amount of white blood cells. So it's like a kamikaze army, 24 hours a day of white blood cells just throwing themselves at the source. But the source will explode in every direction every second. And it's not just going to be a single atom in your body, but that's enough to trigger a tumor in your body, by the way. But it's not because there was so much got out or released, and that they built these reactors in an earthquake zone with a 3,000-year history of tsunamis over 300 feet high. They built it right on the tectonic plates. So this had to happen at some point. They put the reactor fuel pools with the decades of reactor cores at the very top of the buildings. So it clearly looks like this was designed to happen at some point. They also knew that the prevailing winds blew to North America. And we know this from Japan when they used to ship over what they call fire balloons. And these were balloons with altimeters, crude-made altimeters, but not that cruel, that was designed to carry bombs over to North America and then eventually fall somewhere in North America. It was just random terrorist attacks all over the country. And they were very good at it, and they still find bombs today. So like they were well aware that the wind was going to bring the radiation fallout over. Now all nuclear power plants are hemorrhaging radiation. Imagine, if you will, a wolf run by evil, disgusting pro-nuclear. Just my apologies. Hang on a second. I forgot what I was doing there. There we go. We're back on track. Pneumonia cases surged in Japan's Tohoku region, and the frequency of pneumonia also increased after Chernobyl. Now, that was true in North America, too. Certainly on the West Coast, I've seen just perpetual people getting pneumonia after Fukushima. Serious abnormalities found in evacuees. A Sapporo doctor shocked by the quick onset of suspected thyroid cancers. Such rapid growth was impossible in children before 311. Serious abnormalities found in the evacuees. The major media, they didn't bleed and their hair didn't fall out, yet so many were deathly exhausted. Doctor on an internal radiation exposure. Well, because for every white blood cell you're producing, you're displacing a red blood cell. And the red blood cells carry oxygen nutrition. So you're producing so much white blood cells, you barely have enough oxygen to function. So the victims are very lethargic. Let's just kind of put it that way. Internal radiation exposure damages the DNA. Plutonium hot particles seen in the cells, and they were like, avoid touching the death ash. The death ash. That's an appropriate way to describe it for North America too. Every community, every city, every supermarket, and you're drinking water. Just bear with me. Sometimes I'm a bit. Sometimes it takes me a while to get to. There we go. Just hang it there for a little bit. So the death ash covered the whole planet in 26 days. That's reactor 3 detonation. It ejected the reactor core and the fuel pools right out of the building. NHK broadcast warning about internal radiation exposure. Even a low dose will cause damage. So the whole world got a low dose. Fukushima Daiichi worker found unconscious. Now, officially, nobody's ever been hurt by radiation from anywhere in the world in history. This is an industry whose time is long come and gone, yet are still dominating your universities, your medias, your governments, your communities, your politicians. They're just a curse on humanity and the 8 million species. Male workers and subcontractors worked at Fukushima Daiichi became unconscious in the dormitory and had to be evac out of there. 40-year-old Fukushima radiation worker dies of acute leukemia after working at a plant for a week. So, but officially nobody died at Fukushima. Nobody was hurt at Fukushima. No, because it was only the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society, the immigrants who don't speak the language. So they don't keep records for those people. Think about the west coast of Canada, like the plot of a summer horror flick. All along the Canada's Pacific coast, mussels, and we done the whole coastline for 6 years, 4 to 5 months a year, on marine research expeditions. Bodies are swollen by cancerous tumors, and an unprecedented mutation is allowing cancer to spread from one species to another like a virus. Scientists say it's beyond surprising. Cancer spreading from one species to another like a virus. You heard of the bird flu? This is the Fukushima flu. That's what the bird flu is. That's the cover story for Fukushima, right? Can you wrap your mind around what I'm saying there? Cancer to spread from one species to another. Can you picture it? I can help you. So species to your left, because I went up and done research expeditions from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska. And so the species to your left is what it's supposed to look like, and well, it did look like in 2011. And I went back for 5 more years because the species to your left had disappeared. The only thing left was kelpweed, kelp cabbage. There was, like, you would find a random green sea anemone, and you would find a random purple starfish. You would find a random, but you wouldn't find this incredible diversity, this amazing to your left, this amazing, wonderful, just wonderful. You never got tired of being along the coastline to your left. When I was doing the research, there was nothing there. 19-foot tide exchange twice a day. There was nothing there. The only color on the beaches would be my little doggy or me. And we found a total, now that don't mean anything was healthy, but we found a total of 100 species. One here and one there, right? So we counted them. But there was no, so for instance, whelks, they're like a little snail in one way. And they have a single shell that's built like a teepee tent. Or, I'm sorry, whelks are a snail. I'm thinking of another species. But periwinkles, which is a snail, you would find like 500,000 on a big rock. And you couldn't find any. And there's this one research institution up to a university in Bamfield on the west coast of Vancouver Island. I got kicked out of that university, chased out. I was on crutches, right? And they're just badgering me to get off their property. And because you know what my answer is going to be to them, right? I had put up a 20-minute interview I'd done with the dean, who told me there was no Fukushima fallout. So I let him tell his lies for 20 minutes, and then I hit him hard. And I go, where's all your periwinkles to? And he was like, periwinkles? 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 And he was literally panicking that somebody was questioning him. Wait, there's tons of periwinkles. I said, okay, where? I'm going out there in the boat tomorrow. Tell me where they're to. And they went, well, you got to get out of here right now. He said he was on camera, right? I should put that video back up because they took down my other site. Everything was gone. Yet they had 70 universities funding the Banfield Research Center. And they even had live cameras going when Fukushima was happening. And they took all them down after because all the species disappeared. The species to your left now are exterminated. So cancer just spread from one species to another like the virus. And so the species to your left are exterminated. We know because we went back for 5 more years. And I spent 6 years. 6 years of doing research expeditions along the British Columbia coastline from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska. There's 27,000 islands. Like every facet of the story is insane. You know, they came out and fed you that map over there, and then they came out with the headlines like, "This Fukushima map is a fake." But that was Noah's tsunami, and they were putting out that story saying, "Look at Fukushima fallout." And when you went to the comment section and said, "Oh my God, that's terrible," they would say, "What are you talking about, stupid? That's the tsunami." But this was Noah, and that is Noah's tsunami. But this was Noah's dispersal in the Pacific Ocean. And they refused to release that. That one got released. That one got slipped out by a whistleblower, and it got confirmed that was actual Noah's map, right? And that was a horrible experience. 6 years. I mean, the coastline was literally a dead coastline. And you're out there trying to do research. That's okay. Let me go back up here. Not sure where I was. I'll get there in a second. Oh, there it is. TEPCO began coating the seafloor. No, that's not the spot, is it? It's further up here, I'm sorry. That's it there, I think. Yeah, that's it. Where is it? Okay, here it is. Like the plot of a summer horror flick all along the Canada's Pacific coast. It just can't be the Canadian Pacific coast. It has to be all communities on the Pacific, right? It's not just going to be one coastline. You're talking about an open ocean, so. Unprecedented mutation allowing cancer to spread from one species to another like a virus. And notice all of these headlines, they never mentions the word bird flu a single time. Skyrocketing cancer cases in Fukushima. Alarming cancer rates after the nuclear disaster. Child cancer is up 5,000%. Considerable higher than estimates. Cancer outbreak shows officials must now prepare for the onset of leukemia and other diseases. There's many, many diseases. Many baby seals are dying of leukemia-linked disorders along the California coast. Blamed for over 1/3 of the recent deaths at the San Francisco Bay Rescue Center. Leukemia in seals. Cancer epidemics underway in Fukushima. Rates up 6,000%, says the head of the Cancer Research Center. It's definitely a holocaust. Everything's being swept under the rug. Very, very frightening. My family members are brainwashed. That's normal. Like, the media has got a stranglehold on common sense. Anybody that goes to the media looking for common sense walks away with some kind of a mental derangement. Japan professor, outbreak of cancer is now underway in Fukushima children. Clear evidence of an epidemic. All of Japan is being exposed to nuclear radiation. And government official will be disastrous if we have to conclude there's an actual increase in thyroid cancer. It's not just going to be thyroid cancer, right? But the problem is with thyroid cancers is you're producing radioactive hormones for the rest of your life. And I can tell you right now, that is not going to work out for you. Former official, Fukushima radiation is killing children. Heart problems, leukemia, thyroids. And like when you're getting any of these, you're going to be producing not only radioactive hormones, but radioactive stem cells for the rest of their lives. And they're developing too, right? So we need to admit many people are dying, but we're not allowed to say that. Authorities are hiding the truth from the world. Terrible things are going on. And so that's quite a statement. We need to admit many people are dying, but we're not allowed to say that. That's a horrifying statement. But that's true everywhere, unfortunately. And that's why we have the poll that we have tonight. The curse of humanity is United Nations. UNSCLEAR, IRPA, the IPRC, the IAEA. They all back each other up as if they're independent experts when they're all the same people. This model is based on 31 days when it stops. And right now you're 10 days of radioactive fallout. Now you're approaching 20 days. Now you're at 20 days of radioactive fallout of cesium-137 at 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air. And so there is nowhere on the planet that you are not going to be bombarded permanently, long past the human experience, and so is every species. And it's an awful story. I get that, right? It's a terrible story, but that's how you deal. We have to deal with the facts. We can't just pretend it's not happening like they're doing. That's the opposite of being a person, okay? Press watches the government's dump radioactive waste in the Tokyo Bay. Oh yeah, what are you doing? We're just dumping sludge from the sewage plants. Tokyo government unveiled a transport of incinerated radioactive sludge. Incinerated, because when you incinerate at 3,000 degree Fahrenheit temperature is the typical temperature of an incinerator. You can't destroy the radiation. You're just going to release it back into the environment. Like, calling these people idiots is being polite. That's one of the most frightening statements imaginable. Sharp rise in iodine-131 levels at 3 Tokyo sewage plants. Well, like, just the reason they use iodine-131, because if you look it up, it'll say 8-day half-life. It won't tell you there's 10 half-lives on top of it. You'll think it's gone in 8 days, right? But there's 10 half-lives. And then wherever there's iodine-131, there's a host of other isotopes. at much larger numbers. There's some examples coming up. Tokyo government finds iodine-131 levels up to quadruple cesium levels in the water reclamation centers. So the water filtration facilities, it wasn't the iodine-131s, it was curium isotopes. That's the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rods. With a quarter million lifetime, when you take 10 half-lives. But, it could decay to something even worse on top of that. Because that's what a half-life is. It goes to, half of it will decay to another isotope. That don't mean it's a good thing, okay? Tokyo finds iodine-131 levels up to quadruple the cesium level. So once your water filtration system is contaminated, that's permanent. They couldn't get rid, not only was the water filtration facilities incredibly contaminated, but they couldn't get rid of the sediment from the water filtration facilities. And just in the first number of months, they had 50,000 one-ton bags around Tokyo. They wanted TEPCO to take because it was sediment from the water filtration facilities. And it was so radioactive, they didn't know what to do with it because it was nuclear waste. So you no longer drink the water from those pipes. Fukushima is in a recriticality, which means an ongoing chain reaction. Iodine with no containment, obviously. Iodine-131 detected in 4 locations: Tokyo, Nagata, and Niigata are both on the opposite side of the country, right? Towards South Korea, North Korea. Iodine-131 detected in Tokyo and multiple locations during November. 350 atoms a kilogram at the garbage facilities. So again, when you hear iodine, remember the reactors runs on plutonium, uranium, not iodine. Right? Iodine is the way of downplaying it. 10 of 12 sewage plants tested positive. But what the iodine does tell you is that if it's late in the year, like December, and you're seeing these numbers, it's because the chain reaction is still ongoing because it has a short half-life. But the reality of it is they're not telling you what's on the go. And look at this worm, this nut job, Robert Hayes. He's a professor, right, in Florida, is it? He's a terrible, terrible, terrible traitor. And can you imagine how evil his students are? The United Nations and the World Health Organization, which is the same organization, that's the United Nations, agreed that Fukushima did not hurt the public. Really, it didn't hurt the public. Yet there was 865,000 extra cancers in the first year. Does that qualify as hurting the public, or is that just me being a crybaby? Yee doggy. Robert Hayes, truly terrible person, eh? Every day he's posting videos on YouTube and TikTok. Saying it's like a banana and a potato chip. Every day he's out there like a worm. As soon as he finishes school for the day, he's a professor. As soon as he teaches all these little sadistic demons to be monsters, he'll start producing videos before he goes home. With the help of these little Sally Anns, I'm sure. It's a hard case. Does 865,000 extra cancers in the first year count? Extra cancers. Not everybody's going to get cancer. There's heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism. Are you seeing Alzheimer's and dementia skyrocket? Yeah. Ask your hairdresser the next time. How about autism, Down syndrome? Do you know that's the first studies they do after a nuclear accident? Do you know why? Because they know it's going to show up everywhere. High levels of radioactive material found in Tokyo, 170,000 atoms a kilogram in the slag, approaches the levels found in Fukushima. So this is Tokyo, 240, depending where you're 270 kilometers away. Because Tokyo is around 36 million people, metropolitan Tokyo. It's very big. So on one side, on the south side, or the north side of Tokyo, it's 240 kilometers. On the south side of Tokyo, it's 270 kilometers from the never-ending perpetual nuclear meltdowns. Because radiation, a nuclear meltdown is a perpetual machine, right? It's the only thing we know that is a perpetual machine. It's splitting atoms. So the fuel in your fuel pools worldwide there's about 1,000 fuel pools with no containment, are splitting atoms. That's why they're kept in the pools. And those same atoms you would normally produce for each reactor core to power 1 million homes and businesses, those atoms are released into your environment. And almost every nuclear plant, except for the ones in the cities, are surrounded by farms as far as you can see, even if you're on a satellite. And so what do you think they're up to? Do you think that that's an accident or a coincidence or something? It's not. Radioactive material spewed to the air and the sea. We don't even know where the 3 melted reactor cores are, nuclear expert says. It's not under control at all and is still getting worse 3 years later. TV. Many young people in Fukushima who are in high school have died suddenly. Officials ignore all the problems. Former mayor, people are always told any disease they have is not caused by radiation. Doctors near Tokyo attributed symptoms to radiation exposure. We have begun to see increased nosebleeds, stubborn cases of diarrhea, flu-like symptoms in children. There was lots of children there where they never gained a single pound in a year in the nuclear wasteland, forced to stay there. Local government, 276,000 atoms a kilogram of radioactive cesium from a soil sample near Tokyo, which by which you want to multiply by 66.6 to get the square meter. Their estimate was 18 million atoms a square meter, but I think it's a bit more than that actually, it's the real number. Feds conduct aerial radiation surveys near Seattle. It was 450,000 times above what they call background level left over from the nuclear testing / nuclear war. Same nuclear weapons, the same radioactive fallout. So if you detonate 1,000 nuclear weapons, that's a nuclear war. It's the same radioactive fallout from 1,000 nuclear weapons used in war, or if you used it because you're just insane. Like detonating nuclear weapons on the planet is probably the craziest thing conceivable. Feds conduct aerial survey to get baseline readings, measuring gamma emitters like radioactive cesium and iodines. Like they always use cesium and iodines for 99% of the stories, you'll notice. It's because they're degenerates, see? They can't help it, that's who they are. They're journalists, they're degenerates by nature. Top radiation expert, 50 atoms a kilogram in humans lead to irreversible lesions in your vital organs. That make you feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Remember, the food's 100 atoms a kilogram. 6 in 10 Fukushima children tested have diabetes. The head of the Tokyo area medical clinic said we are expecting diabetes in children from the nuclear wasteland. It's a crazy industry, isn't it? And the more misery is, the more money they're going to make, see? The stock markets survive only on misery for nuclear. Infant deaths are up in BC, Canada after Fukushima. Collaboration United States study. NHK starting to broadcast truth. Large increase in brain tumors and cancers near a nuclear plant. Everyone died, just I'm alive. It's killing me, said the 18-year-old. Government keeps telling me the ICRP, which is UN, says it's safe. The International Committee on Radiation Protection. It's the same people on each of these. Let me explain that a bit. I got a better way of explaining it. It's the same 100 people on the ICRP as on IRPA, as on UNSCLEAR, or as on IAEA. It's the same 100 people, the same 100 scumbags. And we got Kathleen Higley, actually. She does a great job of blowing the whistle on them. We're a small group of people. You should cherish us. I'm going to play that video because that's such a classic. I'm going to adjust the audio. I got to put my yellow rag up here so I know to turn my microphone back on after. I'll be back. When
I was trying to pull this talk together, not only will I sort of get a little philosophical about the impacts and the like and try to put things in context. But I also wanted to talk a little bit about who are these radiation experts that get trotted out in events like this, or that get to participate in various activities and analysis to make pronouncements about is something safe or not safe. And if you look, you'll see organizations that are often represented. The ICRP, International Commission on Radiological Protection, a premier organization. You'll see UNSCEAR and IRPA. So UNSCEAR is the United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation. IRPA, the International Radiation Protection Association. The IAEA and some of its folks, the International Atomic Energy Agency. Our own US NCRP. And then there are a number of other organizations. So there's PAHO, there's the Health Physics Society, there's World Health Organization. All of these will bring in, as necessary, experts to speak to you on issues related to radiation protection, radiation safety, and impacts. But if you go a little deeper and you start looking at these organizations, the ICRP, for example, very well known. It's been operating nearly 100 years, not quite. Main commission, 10 people. It's got 5 standing committees. So it's 100-ish folks. I lead one of the 5 committees. If you look at the United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation that looked at the effects from Chernobyl, from Fukushima, from other areas, and that has about 30, roughly, countries that are represented in that group. If you start teasing through these pictures, you're going to see the same people on every one of those organizations. So the same people from ICRP are on UNSCEAR, they're in IRPA. If you look at the NCRP, again, the US organization that advises the country on radiation protection issues, it's 100 people, a lot of gray-haired 100 people. And most of them are part of UNSCEAR, are part of IRPA, are part of ICRP, participate in IAEA. So the result, or the real world, is that there's not that many folks that really do radiation safety, radionuclide transport, dose calculations, all of this in the world. It's a pretty small club. And we wear 20 hats. Today I put on 3 pins, and I could put on a whole bunch more, but Health Physics Society, ICRP, Certified Health Physicist, I've got NCRP on there, I've done IAEA, and so the point is, we're a small group, you should cherish us.
So how did they all know to laugh at that right moment, see? How do you know that was their cue? Because that's who they are. They're just terrible. It's just a terrible reality. And when they're not sitting there looking like that, they're sitting there looking like this. 90% higher incidence of childhood leukemia around nuclear plants. Author calls for an investigation. Magazine, evidence linking nuclear plants to ill health increasingly compelling. Clear something is going on, says Professor. UK government had blamed a non-identified virus for childhood leukemia rise. And this was right alongside of their fuel processing disease factory facility known as Sellafield. With over 1,000 radioactive buildings on that site. It was a legacy site on top of that from the weapons. It was a terrible site. And the community right alongside it had cancer clusters. We actually have a study where they try to blame it on the common cold, caused all the children alongside the nuclear meltdown to have cancer. They really are an unlikable group of people, aren't they? After working in affected areas, 4 workers have died, victims of leukemia and heart attacks. But officially, nobody's ever got sick. Nobody's ever hurt. There was no releases whatsoever. Despite everything I showed you for the last 3 shows, nothing got out of there. And what did was equal to 3 grams of sugar. Legal expert. 3 police died of acute leukemia after being sent to Fukushima within 50 kilometers of the plant. We know there's over 300 died, right? Staggering number of cancers, illnesses, and birth defects linked to nuclear waste. This was Hanford, up by Hanford. Over 700 illnesses, birth defects, and cancers linked to nuclear waste in a 4 square mile zone. Imagine a 4 square mile, like, this, we're not talking about a city, we're talking about a community, with over 700 cases of significant birth defects, cancers, and radiation illnesses. Everywhere cancer goes, it's a curse on humanity and the species. Scientists, physicians report increased cancers around nuclear sites, birth defects, stillbirths, spontaneous abortions are on the rise. Japan Times, there could be hotspots under the sea, said Tokyo professor. No telling when the contamination levels will peak. 1/3 of the fish caught in Guma Lake, freshwater lake, over the maximum cesium levels. So if you're only going to look at the cesium levels, you're missing the other 900 isotopes you need to worry about. TEPCO to begin coating the seafloor with cement mixtures. You remember that? Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant's start of marine soil coating construction inside the port. There was so much radiation fuel rods that landed in the ocean from the explosions. You remember the explosions? They actually had to coat the ocean floor around the site. U.S. Navy sailors, the USS Ronald Reagan, I know there was a bunch of other ships, Operation Tomodachi, wasn't it? There was a bunch of ships, U.S. Navy ships. But the USS Ronald Reagan was actually within 1 mile of Fukushima, according to sailors that had done an interview. A U.S. Navy sailor, our digital watches, he's talking about a group of people's digital watches stopped working when they were off the coastline of Fukushima. He said they were all laughing at first, but then reality set in. But nothing happened, Dana. Plutonium escaped Fukushima reactors as a gas. It was a colossal 9,000 degrees Fahrenheit inside. It can't be detected with Geiger counters. Terrible things are looming for the children. They must be evacuated, yet nothing's done. It's a criminal. Not a criminal nation. It's a criminal industry that has contaminated your countries with putting monsters in key positions, right? So, congenital heart disease, congenital malformations, operations rose 14.2% after Fukushima. There was a 14.2% increase in the number of operations for congenital malformation, complex congenital heart diseases for neonates and infants. So for every 100,000 live births, there was 14,200 needed open heart surgery. There was similar numbers for males being born with just one testicle. Radioactive rain causes 130 schools in South Korea to close. Yet the rain in California had 10 times more radioactivity. Oh, it was worse than that. It was way worse than that. What happened in Tokyo or South Korea was pretty insignificant on the scale of the numbers that we look at all the time. But there is no safe limits, see? Nuclear fallout will engulf Taiwan. So not only Taiwan, but South Korea were told to stay home because of radioactive fallout. Canada said it never happened. The United States said it never happened. And the prevailing winds have to blow through here first before it gets to Tokyo or to South Korea and Taiwan. Tokyo, and of course North Korea, was brutalized, right? We've covered that. Unfortunately, it took down my other site when we were looking for spiders, because that's a crime. Tokyo neighbor cesium approaching levels found in Fukushima. The Chiba incinerator dust is at 70,000 atoms a kilogram. So you can't get rid of the sewage. You can't get rid of the garbage. You can't get rid of the sediment from water filtration facilities. You can't get rid of the ash from the incinerators because all of this is so radioactive. and that the radioactive emissions from a fuel pool anywhere on the planet is 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. Try wrapping your mind around that statement. The harm caused by nuclear disasters are greater than for any work of man other than the atomic bomb. Like explosions going off in the cells and explosions going off in your DNA. Temporary radioactive soil storage site. There was 150,000 of these temporary radioactive storage sites. They're harvesting food right alongside of 1-ton bags of radiation. And they're doing that in all 14 prefectures. They never stop growing the food in the nuclear wasteland and shipping as much as they could worldwide. They ship it to different countries and relabel it and repackage it as from that country, and then ship it to your country to get you. Like it's hard to appreciate what I'm telling you is true, I'm sure. But there's no incentive to lie to you, okay? I can't have an educational program by misrepresenting anything. There's no need to. How do you make this story any worse than what it already is? Outbreak of cancers. Outbreak. Yeah, we see that with the species on the west coast I showed you earlier. Fukushima radiation is killing children, heart problems, leukemia, and thyroids. We covered those two headlines, I think. We covered that one. Top Japan official on alarming issues recently discovered radioactive hotspots in Tokyo and other areas far from Fukushima. Nuclear expert, I should make it clear that if the United States Environmental Protection Agency safe drinking water levels doesn't apply to rainwater, nothing does. Daniel Hirsch. Yeah. If you put a glass of the stuff from the fuel pool in a restaurant, it'll kill everybody there in 20 minutes. Just sitting there. It'll do that every 20 minutes for probably 1 million years. A single small glass like this. Right, or a small glass like that. It will kill everybody in the room within 20 minutes. It'll do it over and over and over. And we lost around 20 to 24 million pounds like that. Except it's way worse than that. That is now released into the environment and attacks every species. Disinformation by the pro-nuclear degenerates try to confuse the public about the effects of external and internal. Helen Caldicott should be arrested for what she done to us. She refused to acknowledge reactor 3 and 4 melted down. The fuel pools, right? She refused to do it. And she done hundreds of interviews where she claimed the fuel pools were still intact. She's wrote 14 anti-nuclear books, but she's not anti-nuclear. She's a predator, like everybody else in the nuclear industry. Same as Arnie Gunnison done the same thing to us. He built the racks for the fuel assemblies for 70 identical reactor fuel pools in the United States. They're identical. And he claimed the fuel pools were still intact, like crush package. Remember that? How low doses of radiation can cause heart diseases, heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline. Wall Street Journal officials sharply raised the radiation levels for the victims to get iodine pills after the meltdowns, 75 times higher than the degenerate World Health Organization recommends for children. And they are degenerates. They are disgusting degenerates, aren't they? Child's risk of cancer from radiation is thousands of times higher than an adult, not 10 to 100 times, but thousands, because the child is developing. And so they're producing radioactive hormones and radioactive stem cells. that they need for their development. So it's thousands of times worse. It's not 10 to 100 times, it's thousands of times. And it's hundreds of thousands of times worse for insects and birds and stuff like that. Clear to low-level contamination is probably more dangerous than a single dose. Grasshoppers with deformed wings, gray eyes not red, birds with abnormal sperm, strange large tumors. Nuclear experts, don't be fooled by paid industry consultants like Geraldine Thomas, Kathleen Higley I showed you earlier. There's so many of them. Robert, thank God I can't remember his name. Low doses of ionizing radiation do cause cancer. Again, you can't fixate just on cancer. You got to appreciate that this compromises your immune system immediately, permanently too. So you're going to be more susceptible to pathogens and viruses that were normally harmless and innocuous and benign. Idaho TV data shows a large spike in deaths, particularly infants, in the 14 weeks. There's 11 atoms a kilogram wreck your children's health permanently. Radiation in small doses could be disproportionately worse. Doses spread over time might be more dangerous than doses given all at once. Thyroid cancer risk lasts your entire life after the radiation exposures. Thyroid abnormalities in 55% of the Fukushima girls tested, age 11 to 15. And what they noticed about the females was that they were 4 times more affected by radiation than a male. Like they're all damaged, significant damage, but females have 4 times more damage. So we need to protect the female species, every species, including humans on this planet, from this assault, this attack from the nuclear industry. Fukushima girls have 3 times more thyroid tumors over 15 millimeters than boys, and 79% more medium-sized tumors than boys. These are tumors. Just 0.8% of children in 2001 Japan control group had thyroid tumors. It was actually 1 in a million. 36% in a recent Fukushima study. And their tumors were 2 centimeters. And their thyroid gland is only about 2 centimeters by 2 centimeters. In adults, it's 3 by 5. So 35.8%. So when you scale it up, that's 358,000 out of a million. It used to be 1 in a million. In that study, there was 13,646 out of 38,200. Right? So when it used to be 1 in a million, now all of a sudden it's 358,000 out of a million. And the tumors are so big, at 2 centimeters, because that's the size of their thyroid, of a kid's thyroid. So they're producing radioactive hormones for their entire life, let alone their developing periods, right, which is up to 24 years of age or something. Eye-opener, under 3% of the children exposed to Chernobyl radiation while in the womb were diagnosed as healthy at the age of 7. Under 3%. In fact, Kofi Annan had said there was 3 million children required treatment because of Chernobyl. Many will die prematurely. It was in 2000, in the year 2000. And so, radiation illness is permanent. That's a permanent injury. And your body attacks it every second for the rest of your life with white blood cells. UN Committee Chairman studying Fukushima radiation impact. We wouldn't expect to see health effects in children, workers, or anyone else. Think about that statement. And this is the same statement used in the day. There will be no impact. There is no impact. Nobody's ever been hurt for it. And on the 10th anniversary, all the media came out and quoted that actual statement. Columbia medical professor inhaling just one hot particle can cause a cancer because your body attacks the particle for the rest of your life with white blood cells every second of the day with white blood cells. Just a suicide pack of white blood cells attacking that tumor. That's pulsing energy almost at the speed of light every second. Shows the effects of plutonium on the lung tissue. A single particle can cause a tumor in the lung. Well, the studies on the beagle dogs and beagle puppies from Dr. Raymond Gilmedy from Loveless Respiratory Research Institute in New Mexico, on 144 beagle dogs, for instance, every dog died of tumors. The majority of them were bone tumors. And as you know, bone tumors is a terrible, terrible way to die. Cesium-137 immediately damages the heart muscles. It's not slow acting. It immediately damages. So when you were seeing people over the last 14 years dropping dead of heart attacks on the streets, like 30, 40 years old, that's the Fukushima effect. This was a xenon plume. To your top left-hand corner is 20 days of radioactive xenon fallout. The United States, Washington was 450,000 counts per square meter or something, or cubic meter of air. Xenon is known to cause dramatic increases in lung cancer. It bombards the humans with powerful X-rays. The Fukushima plume models on the United States of xenon. Another study was showing 1 million atoms a square meter. This is radioactive fallout underground at 1 million atoms per square meter, all of Canada, United States. Another study out of Canada, out of the West Coast, was 220 million atoms, or this one was out of Ottawa, Canada, rather. It was 220 million atoms per liter of iodine-129. This is a forever isotope, and this attacks the thyroid gland permanently for 150 million years because there's 10 half-lives, right? So it'll never go away. And so this kind of per liter, we're talking about radioactive fallout, sustained across the northern hemisphere, which means you saturated the thyroid glands of every species, period. There was another study at the West Coast of 20 million particles of radioactive iodine-131, and the author of the study, let me see if I can go find his video, because we don't play that enough, do we? Had claimed that it was only equal to 10 counts per minute. Now, if you know anything about mathematics, 20 million is a big number, right? And so each particle is pulsing energy at the speed of light. Let me find out, because he had made a disclaimer. There he is. He was doing this presentation at Simon Fraser University. And these are all propaganda you see listed there. Cosmic, terrestrial, atmospheric, radon, natural radiation, human body, sleeping next to somebody, living near a nuclear plant, etc., etc., smoking cigarettes. But they got nothing to do with anthropogenic man-made radiation. They have nothing to do with it whatsoever. Now, he also got $6 million a year to create isotopes for hospitals. So there's a pretty big incentive for him to lie.
And living next to a nuclear power station can actually contribute less than your loved one when it comes to... with myself as one of the principal investigators, was awarded $6 million.
I cut it off too early. It was per year. But remember this part here where everybody laughed? Next to a nuclear power station can actually contribute less than your loved one when it comes to... You got to kind of watch that interview. Because like he bites his bottom lip when he says it and everybody laughs on cue. How did they know to laugh? Well, they were the pro-nuclear students. Eh? It's a pretty revolting thing to do. So he came out, the study found 20 million, students found 20 million particles of 131 per liter of fallout. This wasn't on the United States in particular, but it certainly includes it. The study was out of Canada, in the British Columbia. And what that meant was 20 million pulses of energy per liter of just iodine-131. You can't just have iodine-131, by the way, right? So very dishonest. But then at the end of the lecture, he had a disclaimer. He says he's getting $6 million a year from the nuclear industry to come up with a way to make isotopes to inject into people. Which, as far as I know, and if you've seen my presentations on radiation therapy, you would know that's called a genocide. Federal Training Manual refers to sick and nuclear workers as Freddy Kruegers. The Federal Training Manual, the Federal Training Manual. Say when you come across a sick nuclear worker, consider him as a Freddy Krueger. Oh, I'm sick. The government won't help me. I work at nuclear. They're like, get away from me, scumbag. They're trained to have that ideology, right? To ignore any kind of adverse effects. To reject it. Tritium rain to result from the disposal of Fukushima contaminated water. In 2013, you may be interested to know that radioactive rainfall occurs around nuclear plants during normal operation. Like the Canadian CANDU reactors, the one in New Brunswick, the Point Leperre, releases 14,600,000 trillion atoms of tritium-3H, not tritium, but tritium-3H, which is the anthropogenic man-made tritium, legally a year. This is equivalent to a massive nuclear event. They release legally because they can't contain it. And the tritium is about producing tritium for the hydrogen weapons, right? Because tritium could increase the potential explosiveness of nuclear weapons by hundreds or thousands. That's why the CANDU reactors exist. 43% of kids have thyroid abnormalities in new Fukushima City test results. TEPCO. They want you to blame TEPCO instead of the nuclear industry. Never forget that. Fukushima worker transported to hospital in bad shape after working at the number 2 reactor. Fukushima study, people inhale up to 85,000 atoms of radioactivity in just 4 hours, and they're only including iodine-131. Children's health problem increasing, incurable stomach aches, chest pains, nosebleeds that don't stop, diarrhea. The International Atomic Energy Agency admitted there is no such thing as a safe level of radiation, and that the standards are based on benefits. Of course, there is no benefit. Their standards are not based on what is safe, but how great the benefit. So there is no great benefit for anthropogenic man-made radiation. That's why we have terrorist laws, right? So, like, they should be disbanded just because of that alone. They don't have a standard, folks. Their standards are based on bananas and potato chips, not based on uranium or plutonium or anything else. It's not based on anthropogenic man-made radiation. It's based on everyday, harmless, stupid, natural background stuff. That doesn't mean nothing. We're already acclimated to that stuff through genetic superior selection, right? World Health Organization. Fukushima workers had radiation doses of over 10 sieverts in their thyroids. The homeless, the destitute, the victims of society. They would have died that day or that week. I'm surprised they lived long, even a day, but there's no way you're going to survive with those kind of doses. Former top, but officially none of this happened. Nothing I showed you tonight happened officially, or last night, or the show before that. Former top Japan nuclear official appalled by a new finding: iodine-133, which is a 10 times more iodine, or 30 times more than 131 ratio, likely a major contributor to the thyroid doses at Fukushima, as a much bigger health concern than the iodine-131. We didn't need Caldecott to tell us that. That story was from different people, not Caldecott. Absorbed radiation doses, they get their name stuck there to try to give them some street cred so people will start listening to them. But what these people have done to us, how do you forgive what Helen Caldecott and Christopher Busby and Arnie Gunderson done to us? How can you forgive that? You'd have to be stupid to forgive them for that. Absorbed radiation doses, by the way, of iodine-132 was 10 times higher than the 131, and the 133 was 30 times higher than the 131, and they're about 9 times more effective at ionizing and radiating the thyroid glands than the 131 is, which is incredibly effective, by the way. Kids running a marathon on streets with radioactivity of 134,000 atoms per square meter. Someone stop these people. Scientists, the slower you spread radiation doses, the more effectively it produces cancers and inherited defects. And Japan is going the very best way in the world for destroying the human race. Another Fukushima cleanup worker dies, found collapsed after removing the radioactive soil. Many policemen in Fukushima died from radiation, said the policeman. We know there's over 300 that they admit to. 179 microsieverts per hour at elementary school. Remember, the Geiger counters only measure gamma. So if you got gamma, it's going to be loaded with alphas and betas and neutrons. Hot spots at the bus stop, main gates, schoolyards, pools, and gyms. 50 miles from Fukushima. TEPCO, send us people who don't mind dying. How many nuclear scientists, nuclear academics volunteer to wonder? Okay, here's another question. How many nuclear scientists and nuclear academics blew up laughing? Because they knew they weren't going. Inhaling particles increases the radiation exposure by a factor of 1 trillion. And that poison is 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison on top of that. So 2 billion times 1 trillion. That's what a single atom does to your body over its lifespan. And you reckon your chromosomes, your DNA, your cells. And folks, I don't expect people to be able to keep up with the things I'm doing. It's a daunting story. It's a heartbreaking story. And I have to do these shows because I've done 6 years of research expeditions on the Pacific Ocean for 4 to 5 months a year, and I can't have a normal day anymore. See, and this is just my way of surviving each day, is to come here and tell this story. Because what I went through was it was horrifying. It was a horrifying experience, period. To go out and see everything stripped off the coastline year after year. And then being attacked. I was attacked the entire time. I'm still attacked today. I'm still hated. I'm still hunted. I'm still vilified and demonized. And I'm just trying to do the moral and ethical thing. Trying to keep the story alive because nobody else is telling the story, or trying to educate the population. It's a daunting task, right? And no matter how shitty I feel, it's very difficult for me not to come and do the show. If you compare Fukushima, which is completely gone, to Chernobyl, which is 3/4 of it left, you might appreciate, that's a single building, you might start to appreciate the fact that we're in real trouble, and only an educated population can fight for a future, for whatever can survive this onslaught we're into. And we're coming in close to pulse. We still got a few minutes left too. We're going to play one of James's song here in a minute. Still got a few minutes to give us a thumbs up. Hi to everybody. Hugs for everybody. Is Fukushima unprecedented nuclear event radioactive fallout behind a worldwide extinction event? And I showed you a bunch of that from my research expeditions. And then I showed you all kinds of stories to help you appreciate the enormity of that equation. Hopefully I did anyway. And James got me all geeked out with all the equipment. He got his video and his picture up there. I'm going to play one of James's songs. I really like that Nucleo Italiano. But the problem is he got so many songs I'm stuck on that they're always going through my head. Like right now, Dr. Sternglass, that's always singing away in the back of my head for some reason. And, well, there's quite a few, obviously, right? That man does not know how to make a bad song. We should be very happy for that. Pink hydrogen's got such a... It's about a small modular reactors, nuclear making hydrogen, right? To replace gas and oil. And it's the most resource-intensive way to make it is through nuclear. Maybe we'll do it. When you got cream box, that's got such an amazing... All of them do, certainly, right? Persistent neptunium-239, anti-nuclear... let me see. Dr. Sternglass really, something about that song lately is always boom, 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 back in my head there. Nuclear Jamaica, Meltdown Queen. So I listened to that 3 times this evening. Maybe we'll go with the Meltdown Queen tonight, eh? So what I'm going to do is control the volume on my side. I'll drop it, go over and make sure you got 1080. I'll start the video back up here. I got to make sure you got 1080 first. Because if it does it on the screen, you get all kinds of popping, right? Alrighty. Hopefully I'll see you tomorrow night. I'm still not back to normal, but I'm doing pretty darn good compared to what I was. I went through hell for 10, 12 days there. I'll see you on the next show. Have a great night, everybody.
Untouchable, yeah, she's unstoppable. Tick, tick, tick. Hearts on split, split, split. Watch her move, boy. She's your meltdown hit. She walks in like a savior draped in radioactive silk. Promises the future, but her balance starts to tilt. Heels strike the ground, they call it innovation, but every move she makes is pure detonation. Tick, tick, watch her light the fuse. Her lips are like ignition, sparks in every word she speaks. She dances through collapse while her empire springs a leak. She's got blueprints in her pocket, chords hidden in her clutch, and every man who follows her forgets she burns too much. Snap, snap, she's the queen of chaos. Tick, 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 watch her take control. She's a meltdown queen with a heart so cold. Snap, 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 you're under her spell. She's the meltdown queen and she does it so well. Break it down. She keeps a coded suitcase, her secrets stitched in seams. Her nails are brushed with graphite, her plans are laced with schemes. They call her the solution, but her lies are all on tape. And when the fallout settles, there's no chance to escape. Now you're caught in her trap. Shaman Darian. Oh, she's flawless, she's insane. Your dream girl, your nightmare, your chain reaction flame. She's untouchable, unshakable, impossible to tame. But when she melts down, boy, you'll forget her name. Tick, tick, she's the game you'll lose. Tick, 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 she's a chain reaction. Every step she takes leaves destruction. Snap, 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 her game is supreme. Meltdown queen, she's the star of your dream. You don't even know. Her charm's a perfect weapon, her brilliance blinding clear. Her plans are sealed in circuits and she smiles to engineer. Every corporation crowns her of the prize, while the ocean full and cities vaporize. Tick, tick, she's the queen of disguise. Tick, tick. untouchable, unstoppable. She'll steal your soul, leave you unlovable. Snap, 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 what's left to say? No down queen and she'll blow you away. Untouchable,